welcome to episode 2 of Creative Adventures, the audio transcription thing of stevexoh's Substack. And I'm tempted to explain what this is all about in case you didn't listen to the last episode, but I'll end up doing that on every episode. So if you want to know what this is all about, then the first 6 minutes of episode 1 explain it all. But one of the things that just struck me is I've described it as stevexoh's Substack, and not many people pronounce my name like that, even though that's how I pronounce it. The origin story of it, I drew a little cartoon of it a while back, was that my nickname was Zoh, like XOH, for some time after a number plate I had on my first battered old Volkswagen Polo. And then when Instagram came along, I just became stevexoh. But most people only ever see it written down, so I've pretty much become stevexoh. And like when I meet people, they go, "Oh, you're stevexoh," and I just say, "Yeah." So I'm sort of a bit torn. Do I still carry on calling it stevexoh's podcast? And people go, "What? He's saying that wrong," or do I say stevexoh? I don't know. I'll work it out. They're the types of things that bother me more than other things should bother me. It's like, how do I get that right? And I've also been thinking a lot. I really appreciated everyone's comments and everyone listening to episode 1 of the podcast and people that read the Substack as well. And I started thinking, well, this is meant to be an audio version of the Substack, but I end up talking about so many other different things. Maybe I should do a transcription of this. And then I'd need an audio version of that. And it would just be like a fractal. So I'm just going to keep it as it is at the moment. I'll call it stevexoh's podcast. If everyone writes and complains and wants me to call it stevexoh, then I really don't mind. I'm recording at a different time of day today, so I don't know if that means that there'll be more traffic noise or less, but we'll see. The noisy motorbike made a few people jump last time, but the road looks pretty quiet at the moment, and it's just starting to get dark, so the jackdaws and crows don't normally come after dark. But I'll try and record one in the morning one day so you can hear them come and have their breakfast in a very noisy way. And I've got a big note that I've written that I have stuck on the microphone that says switch fridge back on, because my fridge in my kitchen's right next to where I record. I mean, this is really not the ideal place to record anything. So last time I switched it off when I recorded the first episode, and then I went out for the day. And I think I was away. I was away for a whole evening and come back the next day and realised in the boiling hot weather my fridge had been switched off. So there is a note on the microphone saying switch fridge back on, because I don't want fridge noise on it, but I also don't want stinky melted food. But I really enjoyed recording that first episode and just talking more aroundish the subjects in the Substack and sort of just following a chain of thought. That works for me. I think that's how I engage in normal conversation. Like something will catch my interest and I'll sort of go down a bit of a rabbit hole with it and ponder it. And I mean, it could be anything. It could be anything tiny. When I was on the underground the other day, someone in front of me had a rucksack with the word union, like it was a brand, I think, printed right on it, and it was right in my face, a really busy tube train. I was just staring at it for ages. And I don't know if it's a dyslexic thing or if everyone does it, but quite often I'll look at words and I'll sort of jumble the letters up unintentionally in my head and read things in the wrong order, or the words will change. The other day I saw a trolley outside a Waitrose, and it said ODG trolley on it. I'll put a photo of this somewhere. I don't know if I can put a photo. I'll put a photo on the Substack, which is no good because that's already come out. No, I can't do that. But anyway, just believe me. It's like a Waitrose trolley, and it had a sign on it that said ODG trolley, which I think must be, or OGD, that stand for like Ocado Goods Delivery Trolley or something like that. But I walked past it and I read it, and it said dog trolley. And I read it again, it said dog trolley. And it was sort of stuck on the seat, like where a baby would go in the trolley. And I thought, oh, isn't that brilliant? They've got these dog trolleys. So I imagined, I don't know why I imagined elderly people with a little dog, or maybe people with a therapy dog can take it round in Waitrose. And I took a photo of it to share it on my Instagram. And it was only when I looked at the photo, I realized it said ODG or OGD. I can't even remember the order of them. And I clearly read it as dog so many times. So when I was staring at this backpack that said Union on it, it just suddenly struck me that if I join the top of the letter U on Union, it would spell onion. And that just fascinated me for ages, thinking, that changes so much. I work with a couple of trade unions every now and then, and to now think of them as trade onions amused me a lot. And playing with words in that way, I think that's one of the gifts of dyslexia, that can give you ideas, that can come up with what the hell would be a trade onion, or what would be a dog trolley. And whilst it's really can be a real disadvantage when you're trying to read or concentrate, it is a real gift to be able to follow threads in that way. And lots of people wrote to me to say that they enjoyed the 4 lightly held philosophies for leading a creative life article, both on the Substack and on the podcast. But a lot of people said that the one that they found most challenging of the 4, which I didn't imagine, was the idea of opening windows into your world. And people said they found it the most exciting, like, that's all I need to do. But then suddenly got really horribly stuck and found it really hard to think, well, what is a window? Or to think beyond digital windows like websites and social media posts. And it got me thinking about the somewhat paradoxical stuckness that this digital age has created. Like, there's this abundance of platforms that we can hypothetically reach the entire world, or at least the entire world that's on social media or has access to the internet. And we can put everything out there at the click of a button. But this abundance has potentially limited our imagination as well when it comes to thinking of other more traditional ways of sharing our work, other non-digital ways of doing it. I mean, people have shared their work widely before the internet came along. And really, in the grand scheme of human evolution, that social media has been here for a tiny portion of time. But it seems that the fact that we have these tools can end up limiting our imagination. And quite a lot of people seem to be in a bit of a stuck, demotivating pattern where they just try even harder to come up with ways to make digital windows work for them. And they might do. Maybe I'm just naive here. But maybe the answer lies in ignoring digital windows altogether, or at least deprioritizing them and weaning ourselves off of it for a little bit. But this whole idea got me thinking lots, and I found myself wondering if digital windows should be our last resort, or at least not our default first thing to go to. And instead, maybe we should focus our energy and time on experimenting with more spontaneous and analog windows. And one evening I was thinking about this whilst I was cooking my dinner, and I drew a little 4-box grid. I love 4-box grids. They're just fun to do. Just put any 2 things on each axis, yes and no, or something like for each of them, and just see what happens. So on this 4-box grid, this isn't the best thing to translate onto a podcast because you can't see it. But if you want to draw one while you're listening, or draw one in your mind, you can. So 4-box grid. So this 4-box grid I entitled Thoughts About Opening Windows. And it's not the best thing to try and describe on a podcast, I've just realised. But I'll try and describe it so you can at least imagine it, or draw it in your mind, or draw it on a bit of paper. So the thing's entitled Thoughts About Opening Windows. There's 4 boxes, and on the pointing up axis, like the one on the left-hand side, I can never remember what X and Y is. I struggled with maths at school, I still do. But on the pointing up index on the left, at the top it says planned, and at the bottom it says spontaneous. So on the left-hand side you've got planned and spontaneous. And on the bottom axis it says analog and digital. The idea being that, just to oversimplify dramatically, we have analog and digital windows, and they can be planned or spontaneous. And it's not a well thought through theory beyond the few minutes it took me to draw this up. But what I wrote in each of these, in the top right, so planned digital, it just says everyone is here. Everyone is here. This is the crowded space. This is the skyscrapers in Canary Wharf in Docklands in London, where there's hundreds and hundreds of windows, and you're never going to be able to look in them all. Everyone is here. The algorithm's here. Everyone's jostling for position, which doesn't mean it's not a good thing to do to have a planned digital campaign, but to also acknowledge that everyone is here. And then in the bottom right, it says spontaneous and digital. And this was more of an idea of like, what are spontaneous ways we can share digital stuff? And for me, it's just share everything. Show it all. Show everything. Show the messiness, show the frustration, show the joy, show the output, show the work that you love, the work that you hate. Just show it all. Just show it unpolished. And you never know where it will go. And that sort of weans us off the idea of that we're sharing stuff for clicks and likes. But what's interesting is the analog side of it. And in the top, so planned analog, I really hope this is making sense on a podcast. If not, then go to the Substack and see the little drawing. I might be able to put a link to the drawing in the podcast notes. Who knows? We'll see. But anyway, top left, planned analog. It says, these are invitations into your world. These are things when you can say to people, I'm going to be doing this thing in the real world. Come along and witness it. Come along and see it and be part of it. And then in the bottom left, it says spontaneous analog. And for me, and I've written in the box, it says, this is the domain of the fascinating, the domain of the utterly fascinating, spontaneous analog windows into your world. So I'm not even sure if that makes sense. I really didn't want to think it through too much. But for me, it offers an invitation to just disrupt my habitual thinking and provoke my imagination and encourage experimentation, to stop me just relying on the overcrowded, algorithm-policed social media to share my work, because it just doesn't work for me. And in the last 3 or 4 years, I've had the same amount of followers and my engagement has just plummeted. And it's either that my art's getting really shit and no one's interested in it anymore, or something shifted in the content that's being prioritized. But if there is any theory behind this 4-box grid, then it's this. Analog encounters are far more intriguing and fascinating windows into the world of others. Analog encounters are more intriguing and fascinating windows into our world. I'm more likely to look at and remember a weirdo doing something unusual and creative and bizarre in a park than I am from seeing a photo of them doing it on Instagram or a video on TikTok or visiting their website. And in my experience, the more spontaneous and unplanned these real-world experiments are, the more alive and real it feels in a way that makes it even more compelling. A good example of this for me, and I think a lot of my work starts in the spontaneous analog world and then just evolves, but a good example of this is my globally viral Not a Lost Cat project, which, if you don't know that, the short story is I was bored one day and I was inspired by a real lost cat poster that I saw in the woods when I was walking my dog. I went home, painted my own fake one and put up 10 copies of the poster in central London, just because I thought it'd be something to do. I'm interested in paste-up art and I've not done a lot of paste-up art. And it killed an afternoon and I enjoyed doing it. But what surprised me was that these posters proved fascinating to people who saw them and got in contact saying, can I have one of these to put up somewhere? And so I sent them out to, 20 people that saw these posters, and they put them up somewhere and sent me a photo. And then people would see those posters, and then more people get in contact, say, can I have one of these? And to cut a long story short, over the period of a couple of years, now over 5,000 of these posters exist in 56 countries on every single continent on the planet, including Antarctica. And there's a website, notalostcat.com, where you can go and see photos of them all in these different locations. And they're in South America, they're in North America, Central America, they're in India, they're in Africa, they're in China, they're in Japan, they're in Russia, they're in Ukraine, they're in Scandinavia. There's the one in Antarctica blew my mind, the photo of that one. So without me intending it, the Not a Lost Cat project became a massive window into my world and led to people buying art from my shop, contacting me about projects and workshops, and invited me to do talks about it. I mean, it ended up on Radio 2 Breakfast Show in the UK, which is a big breakfast show. And then there was articles about it in some national newspapers, all stuff that I couldn't possibly have intended to do, at least not with my marketing skill set. I then subsequently used social media at my website to nurture and support this growing, weird, bizarre project. But the important thing is it all started from the seeds of a spontaneous analog window into my world from 10 dirt cheap posters I put up in London. Similarly, stick painting in the park was a spontaneous analog thing that I did in the spur of the moment because I was bored. lonely, didn't have any money, had a little bit of paint. I was living next to a park in central London that had a load of sticks in it. And in the end, that proved to be an important window into my world that connected me with strangers, and I made some new friends and contacts and collaborators. And the thing here is, going back to that 4-box grid, I suspect if I'd planned an Instagram post or a website page about stick painting or the Not Lost Cat project in advance of just doing it, then it would never have unfurled in the same way. I can't imagine saying, I've painted this Lost Cat poster and I would like it to be in 56 countries on every continent on the planet. Go. Or I'm going to be sitting in the park, bored and lonely, painting sticks, walk past and sit down and have a chat with me. None of that would have happened. I simply used those digital platforms to amplify and grow what had already emerged spontaneously from the real world encounters with my work. And I think that's what I try and do now, is to start in that spontaneous analog world and just to grow it from there. And then I might do some planned analog stuff, like come to a workshop, come and do drawing with me in the park or something like that. And then I might use social media to share stuff or to show my works in progress. But it all grows from that bottom left. Actually, that would have been a better way to draw it, with like a seed growing from the bottom left of that 4-box grid. But you can't see it anyway. But hopefully that makes sense. And if nothing else, I think sharing my thoughts on all of this in the Substack and on the podcast is just, it helps me. If no one else reads it and no one else listens, it is sort of like auto therapy for me. Like I don't know how I think or any patterns or things that help me or don't help me until I externalize them in some way. And I think that's why I started doing art more regularly, to do that. And this subject of unmasking has been on my mind a lot over the last few months. And normally when something just keeps tapping me on the shoulder, a subject, then that means that it's important to me in some way. And what I mean by unmasking is this idea, particularly in the world of neurodiversity, where we realize that we've adapted our natural styles in order to fit in, or to not be rejected, or to not seem weird, or to escape bullying, or to escape exclusion, and adapt and round off our natural weird and wonky ways in order to do that. And it's become more fascinating to me as I've started to explore my own neurodiversity. And I didn't think that I'd really tried to fit in by masking and rounding myself off, because most people have normally thought I'm a bit weird. But I started to realise the extent that I probably have done my whole life to try and appear normal and fit in and maintain relationships. And it feels helpful and a bit sad to start to realise that maybe all of the things that I've found difficult over the years haven't been due to my lack of skills or abilities or being fundamentally broken, but simply because I'm not wired in a way that's conducive to ease amongst the norms of how human beings relate to each other. Back in 2020, I became the chair of a small organisation called Move Beyond Words that aimed to support neurodiverse artists navigating the complexities of their world, and in particular finding meaningful work, having access to funding, and really finding ways that they could thrive. And during this time, I became fascinated by the concepts of niche environments and reasonable adjustments. And I can't remember where I first read that. It may have been a book called The Gift of Neurodiversity. But as I said in episode 1, I don't read books fully and I misremember a lot of them. So that book may not even exist, but I remember it being a good book. But anyway, I became fascinated by the concepts of niche environments and reasonable adjustments as a way to, 1, not disadvantage neurodiverse people, and 2, to help them thrive and bring their natural, unmasked, uncensored wonkiness to the world. And the way that I understand these concepts is that a niche environment is a habitat, a situation, an environment, a work, home, studio, social setting that is particularly suitable for a neurodiverse person's unique needs. And I really like that word, habitat. Since I wrote that in the Substack, I just thought habitat is a brilliant word. It's like how we think of nature. What is our natural habitat? And you can start to expand it and think of like what happens to an animal and its behaviours and its needs and its ability to function when its habitat is changed or destroyed in some way. Even if it's replicated or mimicked, it affects that creature in ways that we notice, but it must affect it in all sorts of ways. So I found it fascinating thinking about habitat. What is my niche habitat where I feel resourced and comfortable and can just show up fully unmasked, fully uncensored, and regulated, I guess. And then the other concept was reasonable adjustments. And reasonable adjustments, I understood it as requests that a person can make to facilitate their habitat being more suited to them, like be that in a workplace or a studio or a school or a college, or if it couldn't be adapted in a way, because not everyone will need that. And in fact, most people won't need the same habitat, but you can reach compromises where an optimum niche environment isn't possible. And the reasonable requests may be all sorts of things around desk position, around lighting, around being able to wear noise cancelling headphones, all those sorts of things. So I've really started thinking about what are my niche environments? What are the type of environments where I cannot feel anxious or distracted or on edge or have to work hard in order just to be there before I'm even doing the work? And quite often I'm doing work that is taking people into a place where they maybe feel uncomfortable. I mean, they've asked me to do it. I'm not just making them do it, but work around exploring not knowing, around disruption, around breaking patterns and norms. And I'm starting to realize that depending on the environment, I have to do a lot of work to be able to even show up in that place and feel resourced. And then what are the reasonable adjustments that I habitually don't ask for because I fear I'll seem weird or diva-like through asking them? And the diva-like thing is always a thing for me. It always has been, like, to ask for something because I genuinely need it, and it might be a bit weird or unusual, might just seem like I'm up my own arse, or I am just being a diva-like thing. Like, I only want green M&Ms in my dressing room, that legendary one. I can't remember who that came from. But I've been experimenting with these reasonable adjustments or reasonable requests a bit more boldly over the last couple of months. Things like requesting that a phone call becomes a Zoom call. So quite often people will say, can I chat to you on the phone? And I can talk on the phone, obviously, but I have to concentrate so much more without the visual clues that it's far more exhausting to me. And I can do it, and I've learned how to do it, and I'm good at doing it. But I'd rather jump onto a video call because it just adds a dimension that means I'm not working as hard to process the information. Or telling the waiter in a restaurant where people are watching noisy videos on their phones, I'm going to put on my noise cancelling headphones and I'm going to look a bit weird. But it doesn't mean you can't come and talk to me. If you want to come and talk to me, then you can, or to take my order, or to ask me stuff. And that really is because I find noise so distracting. It is my kryptonite, and it can turn me from a mild-mannered person just into a raging Hulk. Just noise penetrating my experience because I have poor sensory gating, which means I can't filter it out. And that idea of sensory gating is like the process by which we filter relevant stuff through our senses and learn to tune out the rest. But I've never been able to do that. And like, everything is bombarding me all of the time, which is brilliant for ideas. It's maybe how the creative side of my mind works, that there is just all of this information coming in. But when you can't switch it off, or you want to sit in a quiet restaurant, not listen to someone on the other side of the restaurant playing YouTube videos, or someone chewing really noisily near you. I mean, all things that, I mean, we can argue whether they're reasonable or not, but they really disturb me. So I experimented recently with just putting on my big noise cancelling headphones and saying to the waiter, look, I'm going to put these on because I get quite bothered by noise, but it's fine. Just let me know. And most recently, and I think this was the most challenging one, going onto a residential trip run by friends of mine and requesting that I didn't share a room with others, because it means I don't get that alone time social recharge that I need so much to function the next day. It doesn't matter how nice the people are or how lovely the people are. if I don't get that time to just shut down in a room by myself with a closed door, I really notice it the next day. I don't sleep as well, and then it's just like I feel like I'm on the entire time. And I don't mind a tiny room or a mattress on the floor in a box room, and like I really don't need a big room or even a tent or something. But my own space at the end of the night is really important to me. And I made the request, and it was an okay conversation, maybe a bit of a tricky conversation, but the request was understood and the reasons were understood, and it was facilitated, and it made such a difference. And I think with all of those little things, those reasonable requests, where a niche environment isn't available to me, to make those reasonable requests so I can be at my best. I mean, really, this is what this is all about, is so I can be at my best for work that I'm doing, be at my best for myself, for my own mental and physical well-being. And through experimenting with requesting these reasonable adjustments, it's helped me work out what my niche environments really are. And I thrive in quiet places where there's no loud conversations or digital sounds or things that just penetrate my brain and, like I said, make me anxious or angry. I think I get angry at how much it's disturbing me rather than the source of the sound. I also thrive with no shoes on. My favourite thing is feeling cold grass beneath my feet, or at least a carpet or a wooden floor. And I only realised this last year when I went on a writing retreat that I was co-facilitating, and I just felt like a massive imposter for at least the first 3 hours of being there. Lots of people going on a writing retreat run by a brilliant writer friend of mine that's part of a brilliant creative writing organisation. And I was just thinking, what am I doing here? How can I be leading this? And I felt stiff. I felt rigid. I felt constrained. But it was brilliant weather, and we went out to do a little writing exercise, an introduction exercise, I think, around a pond. And there was grass there, and I took my shoes and socks off. And the moment my feet felt the cold grass, the cold grass on a hot day and the soft grass, it sounds so corny, but it was transformative. And it's like, oh, I'm here now. I know what to do. And so I've realized that having no shoes and socks on, I had it in a photo shoot recently. I did a photo shoot and was feeling incredibly awkward. I mean, having my photo taken is not my niche environment, but I have to do it at various times for various reasons. And I sort of like having photos, but I sort of just wish AI could generate them for me. But there was a point in the photo shoot where I took my shoes and socks off, and I was in my studio, and it was in that moment, it's like, oh, I'm back. Here I am. And I realised that I thrive where I can wear clothes that I'm comfortable in and feel unconstrained and unrestricted in. And I spent many years working in corporate environments where I just thought I didn't like wearing formal clothes and suits and stuff like that. And part of it is like, when we want something creative and innovative, why do we all dress in this same way? And what does professional mean when it comes to clothes? There's a whole other podcast, Substack, subject matter around professionalism and appearance and costumes and stuff like that. But I also realised just the clothes don't feel right on me. I don't like restriction. I like to be able to move freely. And that's the same when it comes to structure. I'm at my best when I have a clear but loose structure or an intention. So there's a boundary, I'm clear on what the parameters are, what the edges of it are, even if I've created them. But then there's freedom to improvise and respond within it. I'm at my best with natural lights, avoidance of fluorescent tube lights for long periods of time. I'm inspired by beautifully curated places with weird and wonderful colours and artifacts on the wall, and unusual buildings and windows, like literal windows to look out, and natural light, and a mix of city and nature, and all of those things come together to create a niche environment, an environment in which I'm at my best. And when I'm able to find those environments, brilliant. And when I'm not, then what reasonable adjustments can I make in order to facilitate that? And if none of that's possible, then I know what I'm dealing with. I know the things that have the potential to cause me to tense up, or to, even in a really subtle way. I mean, this is what I find fascinating about exploring this whole area. And then as I'm describing all of this, I realised that my Studio 2 in Kingston, is exactly my niche environment. And it looks and feels like all of those things. And whilst I don't have grass in there, there's some nice rugs in there that I can feel under my feet. And other than the noise, there's some noise from other studios which distracts me. But other than that, that's my niche environment. And what was bizarre, and lots of people commented on it, was I moved into my studio and it looked almost like it does now within a week. It's like I cannot do anything in this studio until it is how I want it to be. I can't paint, I can't draw, I can't do anything. And it's just this obsessive feeling, almost like a bird building a nest or something, or a dog walking around in circles before it lays down to bed down. And it's the same in my flat, and I think it's been the same in the year that I was house sitting. I needed to make a place, even temporary, feel like a niche environment for me. So I think the whole point of this ramble is that learning more about what external factors help me feel closer to my natural, spontaneous self feels like a really important thing. Not just for how I'm wired, but for facilitating my creative self-expression, my ability to play, that we play better when we feel safe and secure. It's helped me realize that what the external factors that I can try and avoid, or at least minimize or mitigate, that distract or disturb or dysregulate me, and then maximize those that settle and soothe and seduce my imagination. Because I think that's what it's about. This is about seducing my imagination, allowing it to relax and come out of its hole and explore and play and not feel censored in any way. And even though I've been able to adapt and work in almost the opposite of my niche environments over the year, I do wonder at what cost and how much energy that has consumed, how much of my underlying attention and focus and energy that these not quite right environments for me have consumed, and energy and attention that could have been better used on the work at hand. And I guess there's a similar story with social situations. Where are the niche environments where I thrive socially? So I can function in these places. And some people that know me may listen to this and think, what are you talking about? you work in these situations, but they're starting to realize that, oh no, there is a cost. There is a cost. And what I find really exciting is this idea of niche environments and reasonable adjustments is what other capacities can we free up if we move more towards them? What more do we reveal or unleash in terms of our creative practice? And in saying all of this, I can't think that this concept, niche environments and reasonable adjustments, isn't just helpful for neurodiverse human beings, but it's an important factor for anyone that wants to nurture more of their creativity. And for me, creativity is simply a moment of spontaneous self-expression. And by that, I mean, you could, I think I said this in episode 1, creativity is spontaneous, a moment of spontaneous self-expression. And the self-expression could take a myriad of different forms. You can have a paintbrush in your hand, you can have a pen in your hand. It could be poetry coming out of your mouth. It could be a dance. It could be a spreadsheet. It could be the way that you speak to a stranger. It could be anything. What it is irrelevant, but is a moment of spontaneous self-expression. So it makes sense that anything that distracts or disturbs or interrupts that freedom and flow of spontaneous self-expression is going to be unhelpful. Anything that requires even a subtle effort in order to appear normal, that I'm doing air quotes for normal again. Just take that as a rule of thumb. Whenever I say normal on this podcast, I'm doing air quotes. But anything that requires effort to appear normal or to fit in or to override how we're experiencing the world uses up energy and attention that would be better poured into our work. It often can feel like there's like a computer or a laptop that's running an important program, but there's so many other programs running in the background that are using up processing power and draining battery. And this feels important because environment and habitat, and again, I love that word. I want to write more about habitat, But environment and habitat are often overlooked, but a fundamentally important factor in our creative practice, not just to inspire us or facilitate creative thinking, but to allow us to feel free, to allow us to regulate, to allow us to sink into our spontaneous selves. And fair enough, the degrees to which all of this impacts is unique for everyone, as it is for everything. But for me, it feels like it's a question worth asking, no matter who we are or how we're wired. What is my niche environment? And it may evolve and change over time. But right now, what is my niche environment? And then what are the reasonable requests, the reasonable adjustments that I can request to facilitate that? So that's episode 2. It was a bit like episode 1. I didn't think I was talking for that long, but it's been quite a while. So again, hopefully if it's of interest. And like I said previously, and I'm not going to say like I said previously on every episode, because that'd be really annoying. So that's my rule. I'm going to change saying that from this point on. But in the Substack, I mentioned workshops. If you want to know what workshops are coming up, visit my website, canscorpionsmoke.com. There is a musical improv workshop and a mask workshop on the way. And also, I've got I spent ages doing it, putting all the original framed black and white drawings that I've got left, ones that didn't sell in exhibitions, are all on my website. They're all discounted. And there's loads of them on there. I like to think of the single frame drawings as like single frame stories. There's only one frame. I mean, you'd normally have a 3-panel story, at least in a cartoon, that allows you to see how things alter or change as a story unfolds. But I like to think of these single frame drawings as an entire story that you look, and it's inviting you to work out what is the backstory, what is the future story, what's happening now. So they're all on my website. So thanks for listening. Episode 3 will be out soon. And episode 3 is the one where the Substack and the podcast catch up with each other, which I'm fascinated by. But I'm fascinated by it probably more than anyone else would be. But like fascinated in that similar way of when two trains sort of catch up with each other and go the same speed almost next to each other. Which I don't know why that's such a joyful thing. So that's what I'm looking forward to with episode 3 of the podcast and edition 3 of the Substack. But thank you so much for listening. I hope to bump into you somewhere. If not, I will speak to you, write to you soon. Bye.